Michael, I want to start by just hearing a little bit about, before you founded BUZZEBEES, the sort of journey that you took to becoming an entrepreneur, a little bit about your personal background and what made you into the entrepreneur that you are today.
Sure. So first of all, thank you for having me, and glad you guys can make it to this part of the world. I know a lot of you have long flight here, so hopefully not too much jet lag for you. But yeah, obviously you can probably hear from my accent. I'm not, I don't look American, but I grew up in the U.S. I was born in Taiwan, and my dad moved us all over to the U.S. to do his doctor's degree in Michigan State University in the U.S. And then after that, we immigrated to New Zealand, and then I ended from New Zealand coming to Thailand. So I've pretty much been in every continent in the world. I think a lot of what we become as entrepreneurs comes from the background we came from. And myself, obviously, if you think back, originally I was born in Taiwan. So if you think back 20, 30 years ago, Taiwan was quite a poor country. So when we moved to US, I have to say that my lifestyle in the US was not what I enjoy today. So it was quite a struggle. We used to, everything I wore was donated from the op shops, and everything in the house was collected from garbage cans and stuff like that. So we've been through a lot in our lives, and that sort of taught you to be like, to fend for yourself, and everything you get, you must work for it. And nothing comes for free, and you don't take things for granted, which I can't say the same thing for my son anymore. But certainly when I was growing up, that's how I grew up. And I think that's really what made me to become an entrepreneur, and that you have to find ways to survive, and whatever problem you face, you got to fight through it. And I think that's the #1 key point of being a successful entrepreneur. And I think everyone hear enough talks from Jensen from NVIDIA, or Mark Zuckerberg, or all these people, where everyone says the same thing. It's all the suffering and it's all the perseverance that would drive you to success as an entrepreneur, and nothing else more than that.
Yeah. And you founded another business prior to BUZZEBEES. So tell us a little bit about what that journey was like and how you got it.
So what I remember, as I mentioned, I moved here with KP. I used to work for KPMG New Zealand, and so they sent me to work here, and I really fell in love with this country and ended up staying here. And at the time, if you remember back in the U.S. just after September 11, so the whole world was flipped upside down from that, and U.S. became very focused on security. So I ended up building a company called iConcepts, and actually I founded it in New Zealand with a few of my friends doing software development, but never eventually too much because I ended up moving out. But so I started writing a software with my brother. My brother's still in the U.S. in Orange County. And we sold fingerprint biometric matching for background checks in the U.S. So my brother's customers was FBI and Department of Justice in the U.S. And he's still doing that today. So that business is what I found. And I was, myself, background as an IT person. So I wrote the first version of the software for him. So basically I didn't sleep for 2 weeks and then coded it. And then he got it FBI certified and he sold it. So pretty much I worked nonstop for 2 weeks for him. And he says that, we have a fixed date. It needs to be certified on this date. Can't be changed. So pretty much I didn't sleep for 2 weeks to get it done for him, and that's sort of where we started our business. And after that, we ended up selling the same biometric software for the Thailand here, and all the immigrations and borders and the jails and so forth. So that's how we built the original business, and that business is still running today. It's actually quite profitable, but to be honest, it's kind of boring business. I mean, you think about background check, how fun is that, right? Money's good, but it's not exactly that exciting. So obviously when the world changed to social media and then the iPhone came out, pretty much I knew that the world was going to be flipped upside down. So I wanted to do something that was interesting in the social space and mobile space, which I knew that was where the future is. And so that's why I built BUZZEBEES. And if people who know New Zealand, actually, because I spent 15 years growing up in New Zealand, BUZZEBEES is actually a toy in New Zealand. Okay, so the company is named after this toy. And this toy represents ingenuity and creativity in New Zealand. Right? So if people know a little bit about New Zealand are very sort of down-to-earth people and very hands-on people and very creative. So the population at that time when I moved to New Zealand, about 2 million people. And New Zealand creates many, many technologies and advancements. We're leading in sports, considering they have such a small population. So that's why I named the company BUZZEBEES, because I wanted to build something that has the mindset of, David versus Goliath. Goliath being the U.S. And I believe that you can build a business as an entrepreneur where you can take on the big companies in the U.S. And that's where we built BUZZEBEES from.
Yeah. I'm curious about, so how long has the journey with BUZZEBEES been, and how different is the business today from what it was when it was founded? How many pivots or changes of strategy have you had to undergo?
Yeah, so BUZZEBEES now, this is our 13th year. I started the company as, actually, I had my other company, and I took those people, I said, look, you got to go learn mobile development, because that's where the future is. So I sent them to learn Android development and iOS development. And I said, look, they came back and said, look, we can't just learn it and don't do anything with it. So this is where we came up with BUZZEBEES. Said, what can we do with mobile development? So the original concept, actually, we launched BUZZEBEES as a mobile application, okay? And it was actually known as, in Thailand, the yellow Facebook. So what we did, our original concepts, we mimicked the feed. This was early days of Facebook. There was no security. You could access anybody's personal profile, and there was nothing to ask, right? Now those days are long gone. But basically, what we could do is we could access your Facebook feed, and we put your Facebook feed into our app, and it looked the same. The difference is that every time you click like, or you commented, or you share something, you would earn points for it, all right? And it was a huge hit because people, give points and then collect the points, and then they would be able to use their points to redeem for rewards and benefits. This is what you saw in the video. Unfortunately, I spent my money and became a huge success. Back then, if you think about this, 12 years ago, we launched it and we had 200,000-300,000 users here in Thailand within 2 months. The problem, they were gone in 2 months after that, right? Because why? You gave away the free stuff, right? And once the money ran out, then everybody goes away, right? There's no way to keep the customer engaged. So what I realized is that when I did this is that this is not going to work because I don't have money to keep on funding the rewards. There wasn't even generating the income. So we realized, okay, what we need to do is this same model, but for the corporates, right? Where they have other revenue channels, right? For example, if you go to a gas station, you fill up the car, you get points, right? So do the same kind of engagement, but on a social basis, on a mobile. And then we pivoted our business to try to put every business into this yellow Facebook, which didn't work. And then we pivoted into, okay, let's just do a CRM loyalty program for the companies themselves, and then allow them to connect with the customers. Because the biggest problem with every enterprise customers is that they don't know how to connect with their customers, right? Especially if you think about the FMCG segment. Imagine you ask Coke, about the end customers, right? They have no idea. You'd be surprised. You ask Coke to just basically sell a bottle of Coke to the end customers. They don't have an idea how to do it, right? But they can sell billions of bottles of Coke throughout the world because they use a distribution network and traditional FMCG kind of concept. But when you're doing a B2C business, it completely changes, right? So what we realized is that we needed to pivot our business to something that allows the enterprise customers to be able to connect with their customers and engage them on a constant basis, right? And from that, they can understand the customers better, and then therefore ultimately to do better product positioning, or to be able to understand the customer from the products, or ultimately what every brand wants to do is sell more products, maximize the value of their customers, and that's what our platform did, basically. Yeah.
Great. And so, was there a moment where you knew, like, this is going to work, we're really taking off, this is our big break? Any kind of stories about where you really knew things were going to be successful?
Yeah, so as an entrepreneur, as we were discussing before, to be honest, there's more horror stories than there are successful stories, to be honest. But reality is that I remember when I first, I took my profits I made from my other company, the biometric company, and I funded BUZZEBEES myself. So I took all my profits and invested in BUZZEBEES to the point where we only had 1 month left of paycheck to pay. Basically, had no more money, right? And we had no customers, and we had just yellow Facebook, and it was great success, but didn't make any money. So, we at that time we were lucky. We had a chance to meet a friend of mine who said, hey, by the way, we have the largest telecommunication company in Thailand, AIS, and then we have Samsung who wanted a loyalty program on the mobile application. So I'm like, well, all the features they wanted, we had, except the look and feel was completely different, right? So we're like, well, okay. So they say, next week you could go in and you pitch for the project. And I said, so I basically went to my development team and I said, look, we better go into the customer pitch with the finished product. Okay, so I said, we're not going there to pitch a PowerPoint slide. We're going to show them the actual working app of the product. So we didn't sleep for another week, and we did the product. We went into the pitch and showed them the working app. They said, okay, done. You just launch it. All right? So that was our pivotal point in terms of, was the company going to survive, right? Because we were out of money, and basically I was thinking, well, maybe I just go back to doing the biometric business because this is not going to work. But that was after quite a long investment, and about $500,000, $1 million already put into it. So I wasn't prepared to walk away from that yet, and especially when I truly believed that this is the future, this is the way the world is moving. If I didn't do it, someone else would do it, right? So I think that's the key, is that the belief of what you know that the world is going to go to, and the belief that you can deliver, right? And so for me, that pivotal moment, that was the pivotal moment in terms of not the success of the company, but the livelihood of the company. And then after we had the first 2 clients, we were like, wow, this is fantastic. We're great. We got the biggest clients. These are huge companies, right? And we were so happy. But for the next 2 years after that, we got no customers, additional to those 2 customers. So, but at least those 2 big customers, they paid the bill because they were quite big and we were quite small at that time. And as founders, we never took a salary, so it didn't really matter. So there was enough to cover the bills and so forth. But and at the time, I was still continued. As a founder, I even went to become a contractor. I used to go contract for IBM here in Thailand just so I can pay the bills. Because I didn't have no money to pay all the salary. Those 2 customers wasn't enough. So I would be contracting on the side and then try to make money from that to pay for my staff. So I've been through all that kind of things. Do whatever it takes to get the company to keep on moving forward. I think the really pivotal point for us was about 4 years into it, where the mobile phone really took off and the social media really took off, and people realized, corporates finally realized. I mean, when we started selling this idea to the company 12 years ago, they're like, what the hell are you talking about? They didn't even understand the concept. But 4 years into it, they realized, wow, this is where everybody's going. And then instantaneously, we got like 3, 4 other big customers, the gas station, the largest gas station, the largest insurance company here. And then from there on, it pretty much was like, people calling in. We didn't have any sales. The only salespeople was myself and my co-founder. And we were the only salespeople. And I'm not even a salesperson. I'm a tech guy. But yeah, that was really the pivotal moment. We realized, wow, this is going to work. Because when people call you and you don't call them, then that's when you realize that you're onto something.
Yeah. Speaking of people calling you, not you calling them, I'm curious about investors in this situation. Like, obviously you had the resources from a successful company to self-finance early and take some of those risks that got you to a successful place. But when was your first contact with an investor? Did you think about trying to seek investment early on, and what was that like?
Yeah, so for myself, I'm a very hands-on CEO. So even today, if you saw the kind of things I'm doing, even though we have around 700 employees, like I was just saying before, like, a lot of friends ask me, you have 600, 700 employees, how come you work like you're the only person in the company, right? Because the reality is I do everything myself still. And it's not that I want to, trust me, I don't want to. Nobody wants to do the things yourself. But you realize that in order to build a successful startup, you've got to still be very hands-on. So I never really went out and pitched to VCs, or I never really went out looking for investment. So investors always come ask me, it's like, would you like us to invest in your business? So when people come ask you for investment, it's like, can I invest in your business? If we like what you're doing, and then you start asking the question, well, should I take on the investment, right? Because once you take on investors, it's a whole different game. Having a private company and having an invested company is different, because then the direction and the speed and the growth, everything, expectations are different. So there was a very conscious decision I needed to make. Do I go through that path, or do I stay on a private company path and just make good money? And I realized that early on that I wanted to do something that was significant, that would have impact to society and the rest of the world. So I thought, well, let's take on some investors and see how far we can take BUZZEBEES, really to how far we can take it. So the first investor we took on was just a couple of people we knew, and it was about a $500,000 valuation at the beginning, and it was very small, and we gave them like 5% and 10% of the company for that investment value. And then the next person called was actually the largest, I don't know if you're familiar with Thailand, but CP Group, which is basically they own all the 7-Eleven chains, all the chickens. They're the largest corporate conglomerate basically here in Thailand. So they own a platform called True Money, which is a digital wallet. It's like the WeChat kind of payment things. And also they own True Telecom, which is one of the largest telecommunications here for mobile carriers. So they are interested in what we were doing. We were growing very fast. So they wanted to invest in our company. And then they called me, and then we had our session. And then they said, look, okay, how much you want for investment? So I just picked a number. I didn't even know what the hell I was doing. I said, okay, $20 million sounds good. So let's value the company at $20 million. And then they're like, how you came up with that? I just made up some numbers, and I like this number. So and they said, well, it's a bit high. I said, well, up to you. You want to invest or not, it's up to you. It's entirely up to you. I'm okay either way, right? The business wasn't burning money. We were profitable after the 4th year. We started we were always profitable after about the 3rd year onwards. So we didn't need the money. So I said, well, either you take it or not take it, is up to you. So and they took it, right? And then the next investor came along. They really wanted to invest in our business because they were also our customer. And you probably know them as the beer company, Sing Beer, and they wanted to invest in our company because we're helping them with the FMCG and so forth. So they invest in our company, and then after that become the banks and everybody. So everybody just started calling and wanting to invest in our business because we grew. As you saw from the video, we have 170 million users in Thailand. As you know, there's not 170 million people living in Thailand, but we have 170 million user base. Why? Because every bank in Thailand uses our service. So we don't know who you are in the bank, right? So if you have 2 bank accounts with 2 different banks, in our system, you're 2 users, right? So out of the 170 million unique users, probably the whole population anyway on the digital system, right? So pretty much we have the entire customer base in Thailand already on our hands, right? So, and we have by far the largest digital platform running in Thailand other than like Facebook or Google or something like that. And so everybody wanted a piece of that, and so we had quite a lot of offers and investment. Even today, people call constantly and say, okay, can we invest in your business? Yeah.
It's kind of the sad irony of startup financing is that you get all the offers after you don't really need it.
Right.
But I'm curious, had you not been able to self-finance, do you think there would have been avenues available to you to find the money you needed to get the early stages going?
Yeah, I mean, investment seed rounds were always there. Early Series A was quite readily available at that time. So yes, I think it would have been okay anyway, to be honest. But especially during that time period where, if you think back about 10 years ago, it was crazy. It's about before people were just throwing money at everywhere because, basically the cost of the interest was 0%, right? Yeah. So the ample money, people were throwing investment everywhere, just left, right, and center. So yeah, I remember there's a lot of startups that, during my early stage of BUZZEBEES. Yeah. But I remember let's say 40, 50 startups at that time. And there's only 2 that's still left. That's myself and another one. And the other one hasn't even grown. It just haven't gone bankrupt, that's it. So I can tell you it's quite difficult. It's not about the funding side. The reality is you shouldn't take money if you don't know how to build it, the business. And I was just watching a YouTube video today from Eric, Eric Schmidt from Google, right? Mm-hmm. So he says that anytime I walk into a startup company and they have a nice office, I walk out. Because that means they don't know how to spend their money, right? Because that means they're spending money where they shouldn't be spending it, right? They have to be frugal with the money and so forth. So reality, when you do a startup, what happens, you have a lot of founders. They go hire the best people and they think their job is to sit on the beach somewhere and sipping pina coladas. Whereas reality is, I still remember one day, this is when our company wasn't small already, we already had 250 people. One of my staff would come running up to me and says, Michael. I go, what's going on? Why are you so excited? The toilet's flooding. And I'm like, what the hell you want me to do about that? Right? And as I told you call the building, you know. And then I said, okay, fine, let me go have a look. So I walked to the toilet, and literally the water was coming out. Some of the pipe broke off. So I took off my shoes, took off my socks, opened the drain pipes, and then went to the back of the office, turned off the main water valve. I mean, because I helped build the office, so I knew where the water valve was. Right? So that's an example of an entrepreneur, not versus, you know, I just go hire a bunch of people, let everybody else run it, and think that it will be successful, right? It doesn't work that way. Yeah.
I'm curious about, I mean, now that you've had so much success, you're sort of at that, like, no longer a startup, now a big corporate phase, you're internationalizing and all of those things. I'm curious about what that experience has been like in terms of the talent of your team and the ability to sort of change the way that you work. Like, what's that challenge been like for you?
Yeah, I think going from a really small company to a medium-sized company is actually quite reasonably okay if you have a solid business model. I think going from a medium company to a larger company, it's extremely difficult, extremely difficult. I can tell you right now, the company is not where I imagine it would be right now, okay? As you get bigger, you know, I think everybody in the room will know this, you add a lot of more layers to your company, and they effectively don't do, pardon the French, they don't do shit all, right? Okay, but you can't run a company of 700 people without those layers of people. The problem is that you lack the ability to hire people who are good enough. One, you can't afford it. Two, even you could afford it, these people have very limited skill sets. Because when you go from a small company, like a startup, it's like one person, you know, wear like 6 different hats. They do all the different things, and that's what a startup does. But once you get to 600-700 people, where the people you're hiring are from like large multinationals or companies, where a company's been there for 100 years or 50 years or whatever, where they're very used to doing a very vertical role, right? So they don't have the breadth of skill to do multiple roles, right? And what happens is that they can do their role maybe very, very well, but what happens is all the other stuff is, you know, gets dropped off, and what happens is the whole company becomes a mess. Because they thought, oh, I was doing this is my job, but all the other jobs, I thought someone else was doing. Who's doing it? There's nobody there doing that, right? So, and then when you ask them to do those things, they don't have the skill set to do that, all right? And as an entrepreneur, your job was to fix toilets, to go buy lunch, write the code, test the code, everything, right? So versus someone my job is only to sell, or my job is only to do operation, or my job is only to do call center, or whatever it may be. They don't have that breadth of knowledge to have the ability to do other things that's needed to build a company from a medium-sized level to a enterprise. Yeah. And that's really where the struggle of my company is at the moment too. I mean, we've grown a lot, but how you take it to the next level? You know, I mean, as I was mentioning before, like if you're at Google or Microsoft or Facebook, where your gross profit margin is 40%, 50%, that's a different story. Right, where my gross profit margin is less than 10%, it's very tough, right? Because you can't go just spend money, hire people. All of a sudden, you become non-profitable, right? And then you need VCs, literally need more money in capital. Yeah. So this is where I think the real struggle is, how you take it from this point to the next point. And then growing regionally and globally is like burning the cash, right? You burn cash and nothing comes back, right? So expansion of beyond your own country is extremely difficult. I mean, regardless how many multinational customers I have, but when you go to another country, they're like, we don't know you. You don't have anything here, and it's really difficult.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious about that. I mean, let's talk about the Thai market first. I mean, what are some of the benefits and the drawbacks of operating in this market in particular?
The good thing about Thailand is that people here are very, very adaptive. So they're very good at adapting new technologies and new ideas. So I can tell you that my entire business that we built here is all about digital engagement and marketing. So what we do is we help brands market their products to consumers, right? Using the program, the loyalty program, and so forth. So I can assure you, there's not a single country in Southeast Asia or the rest of the world that I've been to that is more advanced in marketing with consumers than Thailand. Okay, Thailand is very, very years ahead of anything else on the market in terms of what people are doing in terms of consumer marketing. If you just go to any mall here, you'll see there's just signs everywhere of discounts, promotions, everything. There's no country in the world I've seen ever like that, right? So in terms of the technology that we have to build marketing channels, we're like, why is the rest of the world not using this, right? And we've proven it works everywhere you go, right? So that concept of how you can launch new technology or new products in this country is fantastic because people will adapt to it very quickly, very, very quickly. So which gives new business opportunity a great chance to start up here. The problem with Thailand is that when you get to like my size as a company, you can't go to the next level. Why? Because there's only about 20 families in this country who own 90% of the country, basically, right? And that's difficult. When you have a country that's controlled by only 20 families who wants to own everything, it's very difficult for you to grow. Why? Because they would just build it themselves, or they would buy a competitor and do it themselves, and then they would not. And then if they use you, they want it for free, right? Because oh, but we're so big, you know, you should be paying us, you know. So that's where the struggle is working in Thailand. Once you get to a certain size. In company, I mean, our revenue is not small, so our revenue is about 70 million US a year. So once you get to about 70, $100 million in revenue, it's hard to start going beyond that, you know, and that's where the struggle of being a really large business here is, unless you're one of those 20 families. Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about, I mean, obviously you're internationalizing and that's sort of the next phase of your growth, it seems like, but what's that process been like? How's that experience gone for you?
Yeah, as I mentioned, extremely difficult. To be honest, I've been doing it for even pre-COVID. I knew that eventually I would saturate the market because, as you saw the numbers, we have like 90% market share here, our business here in Thailand. So where are you going to grow, right? You already have 90% market share. So for years, I mean, even before pre-COVID, I recognized this was a problem down the road. So I used to spend 2 days out of the 5 working days in overseas countries. So I used to wake up 4 in the morning, fly to Malaysia, and then fly back last flight back, arrive in Bangkok 1 in the morning, next to go to work. Right? And the next day, and then 2 days later, I would fly to Indonesia. I would catch the midnight flight, land at 1 in the morning, meetings all day, fly back, land 1 in the morning, go back to work, kind of thing. So I did that for about a year and a half, literally every week, like that. And so I went through all that kind of stuff. And even myself, go pitch and go sell and so forth, and just very difficult. You would get customers, but just very slow. Yeah. Right? Versus Thailand, when customers just call you, right? Because here we're very well established, so everybody knows us, so they just call. But in other countries, you don't know anybody, and they don't trust you, and they don't know, like, so it's really difficult. And then after that, COVID, obviously COVID was bad for international expansion, right? Because you couldn't fly, you couldn't do anything, you didn't know what to do. So there was a lost opportunity for our business for 2 years for regional expansion. And that 2 years was a costly period for us because obviously with COVID, everyone wanted to move digital. So what happens if you weren't in those markets, they would have local companies doing those in the local markets. So that was difficult as well. And then now we build offices everywhere, and you know, that needs cash. And you know, everything you spend, very little comes back. So then, and once again, it comes back to your P&L, right? You spend tons of money on overhead of people, tons of money on auditors because you want to go IPO and all that kind of stuff, tons of people on over expansions of overseas offices, and very little return. When your gross profit margins in this, you know, single digits, it's not easy to do. Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously many of your clients are very large corporates. You have, I know, a segment of them who would be small and medium enterprises. They don't make you a ton of money, but I'm curious, since many of the people here work with those kinds of businesses, what are the challenges of serving them, and what's your experience been like for them as customers?
Yeah, so obviously, as I mentioned, when you own 90% of the market share for enterprise customers, you look at new customers. And new customers, obviously, the smaller businesses you mentioned, right? I think this space is going to change a lot in the next 5 years, right? Because of AI. Okay. The reason I say that is because small businesses only care about one thing: is cash flow, right? Because that's their main thing. The most important thing is for small business is money, right? Going in and out. And CRM, loyalty, customer engagement, all that kind of thing are nice to have to build loyal customers. But for a small business, they just want money coming in. But with that said, it doesn't mean it's not needed. It is needed. The problem is with the small entrepreneurs, their time spent, they won't be spending on that because they'll be spending on just their general main core business to generate income. So AI will help a lot with this. So when we serve our smart enterprise customers, what we find mostly is a lot of churn, right? Because they come, they like your idea, they use it, and we're not talking about really small. We're talking about like people, some brands like have 10 branches, 20 branches, or or 5 branches, that kind of size. So it's reasonable. But they would come and go, right? Because they just didn't have the time, or they didn't know how to execute. All kinds of reasons, right? So AI is going to fix a lot of that, right? AI is going to be able to help you with the data we collect, to be able to action things for you instead of you having to do yourself. So as AI gets better and better, AI is going to be a help with that, a lot of that. So I think moving forward, hopefully in the next, obviously this segment of, like you said, is not very profitable, and is actually quite difficult to maintain. But if you don't do it, eventually when AI comes in, it's going to be tough as well. So you don't want to miss the boat on this kind of thing.
Yeah. I'm curious about, what would you say is your biggest challenge as a business today? And if there was, many of the people here provide services to entrepreneurs, some much smaller than you, but I'm curious if there was one problem someone could solve for you, what would it be?
Actually, I think it fits this group very well because as we were discussing, from outside looking in, everyone sees BUZZEBEES as super successful. Like, wow, you've done an amazing job. And I always tell my employees, you look at inside out, it looks like a big garbage can, because all you have in the office is just shit, right? And it's problems everywhere, right? And I don't know what in the world people see. I mean, because I'm dealing with that shit every day. So, but the reality is that headache you have is dealing with problems is common for businesses. But I think most importantly is how you grow your company from whatever stage you are at to the next stage in the company. And that's where the struggle is. For example, my company right now, if you could give me a CEO to replace me who has global regional expansion experience and successfully done it, that would solve my problem, right? Help me connect to business, because as we discussed,
drink pina coladas.
Yeah, exactly. But the reality is because I've never done it before, so how in the world would I know how to do it, right? And you say, well, you're smart, you can figure it out. Nobody's that smart. Okay, you can't figure out everything. You don't know what you don't know, right? And the problem is you can't filter out people who don't know, but they bullshit a lot, right? And then they talk like they know, but they don't know. I've seen a lot of those people. But when you actually work with them, you realize there's no substance, no depth, there's no experience, and all they do is cause you more headache and pain. But if you're able to find genuine people who know how to help you grow your business from whatever stage you're at to the next level. Like, if someone comes to me today and says, Michael, how do I have to go from a startup to a medium-sized or a larger? I can help you. I know exactly what you need to do. Right? But the problem is no one can tell me how to go from a medium or large to an enterprise. No one helps me. No one tells me. And whoever has told me, they don't really know what they're doing. Right? And so it's a real struggle because the people who is taking companies from a large to enterprise, to be honest, they're filthy rich already. They're not going to waste their time with you, right? People like Eric Schmidt, people like all these people who help, really? They're going to come and work with you, But I think that's where the struggle is, and I think if I could have one thing, that's what I would pick, yeah.
Great. So we'll turn a little bit to the questions from the audience. So Abby, over to you.
Hello? Okay, sorry. Yeah, thank you everybody for submitting questions. There's some really interesting ones. How can you cultivate an entrepreneurial mindset among all employees to foster innovation and drive company growth, especially as you're in that rapid growth period?
Yeah, so actually, frankly, entrepreneurship is a mindset, okay? So what that means is that, and I've seen this a lot, and I have to say even with my co-founders, you walk in a meeting room, if you by default assume you're the smartest person in the room, then you kill all innovation and all entrepreneurship, right? And as founders of a company, it's very hard sometimes for us to go sit in a room and listen to stupid things come out of some people's mouths, right? Like, but the reality is like Nelson Mandela said, the hardest thing is listening, right? You want to be the last person to speak, right? Because it sounds easy, but you try it. It's really difficult because you hear these people talk and all you want to do is just cut them off, say stop talking, right? Because it's just nonsense coming out of your mouth. But that is what kills innovation and kills entrepreneurship, right? So if you really want to foster that mindset of, you got to let them express their opinions, even if it's wrong. And the reality is 90% of the things people express is not really wrong, you know what I'm saying? It's like, because in real life, it's not like coding, right? Either code works or code doesn't work. Most things in business is gray, right? Which means there's shades of work and shades that doesn't work. So there's really no clear, say, yeah, this is absolutely wrong, this is absolutely right. Most of the time, if you ask my staff, they would always say my number one phrase is, let's try it and see what happens. Because most of the time I say, I don't know either, any more than you do, so let's just try and see what happens. So if you can foster that kind of mindset in the company, organization, then you will create much better entrepreneurship and a much more company of culture of innovation. And the most important part that you don't want to kill is making mistakes. Because what happens if you pounce on people who make mistakes, they will never do it again, right? Because they're going to get scolded at or yelled at or penalized for trying new things, right? So what I always tell my staff is, we make mistakes every day, right? So our job is to make the least amount of mistakes compared to our competitors or whatever you're trying to do, right? So it's not about how many success cases you make. Reality is 90% is just mistakes and screw-ups, yeah.
Oh, thank you. How do you balance innovation with practicality in a fast-evolving industry, and what strategies have you found effective for staying ahead of the curve?
This is really, really tough one. I mean, it's funny because all the questions you're listing are the ones that my marketing team has sent me. If you read my Facebook post, it has all these answers, by the way. So I don't know where these questions came from. It sounds very similar, but the problem. Okay, so if you're selling Coke, 100 years from now, people are still going to drink Coke, right? If you're selling beer, people are going to drink beer. If you're eating, you still need to eat. Doesn't matter how many AI machines we have, we still need to eat, right? In the technology space, it's different. You just look at Nokia, Kodak, all these companies who do not innovate and constantly grow as part of the business. And you can see what happens. I mean, you look at Nokia, they own what, 90% market share in the world, and they can disappear in 2 years, right? So when you're in the technology space, there's no such things that last 100 years or 200 years or whatever. That doesn't exist anymore. Your ability today is to innovate and constantly stay ahead of where the world is going to. And that is extremely, extremely difficult because that requires balancing between your profitability. I mean, you look at Kodak. I think everybody knows. Kodak invented digital cameras. Right? They invented digital cameras, but they were so scared of it replacing their film business, they wanted to hide it. You can't hide innovation technology. Either you embrace it or you die with it. Whichever one, the result is going to be the same because you're going to die either way. Right? So either you embrace it or you have no choice. The problem is obviously with especially executives in a multinational. And they, well, I'm here for 2 years. I get my big fat bonus. And I'm out of here. Why do I want to rock the boat? Right? That's a different mindset than a founder and an entrepreneur. So they don't want to do anything that disrupts their P&L. Right? But the reality is that if you don't disrupt your P&L, someone else will disrupt your P&L anyway. Right? But how do you do that? Right? And keep shareholders happy in your public companies. It is a real difficult thing to do. The problem is if you don't do it, as I said, you will die eventually anyway. So you have no choice, but you have to learn to find the balance of that. And it's really difficult. There's no magic solution to that one, unfortunately. And I don't even think I have the right balance of that even yet. But if you don't do it, you will eventually cease to exist as a company. Yeah.
What's one thing that if you could, you'd go back and do differently?
Same thing that every entrepreneur answers, don't do it. Right? There's not a single, I mean, you heard the answer from Jensen, right? NVIDIA. What would you do in the startup? If you were sitting at Denny's, what would you do? I wouldn't do a business at all, right? So you have to be, just like Steve Jobs said, the same thing. Everyone says the same thing. You have to be, literally people who are entrepreneurs have to be semi-insane to want to do it, especially in technology. And our food business sometimes is okay because, it's like I said, you always have to eat, and, it's always a lot easier. Technology is extremely difficult. If you don't keep up with the time, the current trend, you will, like I said, it won't matter. Like, everybody talk about AI today, all right? And, a few years ago, everyone talked about metaverse. A few years before that, we were talking about blockchain, right? So which of the blockchain, which of the metaverse actually become a reality used today, right? Nothing, right? But AI is something that is the new phase. The question is, do you believe it will go away, or do you believe it will stay? Will it be a Pokemon, or will it be a Microsoft or iPhone? Well, in my point of view, AI is here to stay. We know that AI is not a gimmick. It does work. It's very stupid right now, but people think it's really intelligent. I mean, if you ask AI, okay, which tree is better? It will give you a perfect answer, right? For example, I told ChatGPT to write a personal profile of myself. I think if I wrote it 1,000 times, I couldn't beat it. Okay, if I spent 1,000 hours, I couldn't beat it. It's so good. But when you're asking it to do a very specific task in a business, it cannot answer because because the business tasks are not opinions. Business are either right or wrong based on data, and you make decisions. And AI and ChatGPT is not smart enough to know that yet. It doesn't have accurate enough data to be able to guess those things accurately to give the response you want. Right? But you wanted to write a story, yeah, you can. You want to tell a story to a kid, you can do that, right? But you cannot use it for business yet. But it will get better and better and better and better, and therefore it will impact your business. If anybody is doing their business now and they do not look at AI, they will be a dinosaur soon. And that's something every organization needs to look at. Yeah.
Maybe one last question?
Yeah, I think this is my favorite question, which is, how do you think about your role in supporting small and growing businesses in Thailand? I think I'm our research director, and we learn a lot about how healthy ecosystems have successful entrepreneurs that give back. Is that something that you do or you're thinking about?
Yeah, so if you see from the video, if you looked at the ending phrase, right? So BUZZEBEE's slogan, our motto is about connecting the world, okay? And the reason we want to connect the world is not for the purpose of the enterprise customers. The purpose of connecting the world is to help the small SMEs. So our job is actually mostly focused about how we help the SMEs. The problem is, if you start from SMEs, your company will die because they don't generate enough money for you. So you start with the corporates, which has enough scale. But your end goal, for example, our ecosystem of rewards and loyalty allows us to connect to SMEs. If you're a bank customer, you can redeem the vouchers and use at any of the small branches and small brands and SME business because we've helped you connect to them already. We've digitized the whole ecosystem for you. If you think about BUZZEBEE, what we're doing, if you look at the surface, we talked about the 5 services that we do, what we do. Reality, what we are doing is we are actually an infrastructure company. BUZZEBEE is an infrastructure company. Our job is to lay the digital roadway for connecting businesses together. So if you think about BUZZEBEE, actually, in fact, if someone asks me, what does BUZZEBEE do? They never get this. We're the new version of MasterCard Visa. You're like, what? It's like, what your service got nothing to do with MasterCard? No, it is, because MasterCard Visa doesn't care about which bank is issuing the bank, right? Which year is the issue. And it doesn't matter which merchant you're using it at. But they're only doing it for payment, right? What we want to do is for all digital transactions, but effectively do the same thing, right? And the only way to do that is to connect all the businesses together on a digital infrastructure. And that's effectively what we do, right? So, but how does that help the SMEs? Well, all our businesses and all our learnings, we effectively push that onto the SME. And we use AI and things like to help them so that they can do their jobs better, they can make more profit, they can retain their customers better, they have access to large customer groups that they didn't have access to before, right? So these are the kind of ways we have helped them to grow their business. And ultimately, if you really want to be a successful business, you've got to help the SMEs. And I know that you may not think this, but Facebook is the one company that has helped the most SMEs. There's not a single company in the world that has helped more SMEs than Facebook. Because everybody can be an entrepreneur on Facebook. You can, if you're a multi-billion-dollar company or you have $10 in your bank account, you have the same access to the customers as that billion-dollar company, right? And there's not a single platform in the world that can do that right now, right? So Facebook has changed the way everybody does marketing and helping sell their products through these channels. All right, so this is quite unique, and I think that's where our business is focused on helping SMEs in a different way. That mission is quite challenging because you don't make enough money from it, but ultimately that's what you're trying to do.
Yeah. Michael, thank you so much for being here. This has been a super insightful conversation. Please join me in thanking him for being with us.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.